Hey there, I'm Christy Wilhelmi from Gardenerd. I have already done a video about how to compost, how to make compost in your own backyard. That video is called Your Compost Questions Answered, and it's got all the things you need to know to start a compost pile. Today though, I want to share a couple of tips that will help you build a better compost pile. Whether you are doing cold composting, which is adding ingredients slowly over time, usually your kitchen scraps and some garden waste, or if you're building an active batch thermal compost pile, which is all about adding all the ingredients all at once, monitoring the temperature, and turning it regularly when it peaks and falls. And regardless of whether you're doing cold or warm, hot composting, these tips will help you along the way. The first thing I want to explain has to do with the science of composting. When you put browns and greens together and a little bit of water, there's a chemical reaction, but there is also a microbial response. Bacteria and fungi will start feeding on whatever biomass you're putting in your bin, whether it's browns or greens. Greens being your kitchen waste, browns being stuff like this bag of chicken feed. This is brown paper. This is perfect. This is the perfect compost ingredient. I could just put this bag in the compost pile and leave it, and it may take up to 2 years to break down. Here's why. Surface area is everything, and the more surface area you have, the faster things break down. This bag has surface area here and on the sides, and that's it. But if I tear this, if I take this and tear it into strips, and then tear these strips into smaller strips, about 2 to 4 inches big, this suddenly has way more surface area than it did as a whole piece. Why is that? Because it has more edges. And in the permaculture world, edges are everything. The more edges you have, the better natural systems work. And that's true in the compost bin as well. So now I've created edges here and here and here, and they can also get inside the layers in between this bag. Whereas before, there was only really, the flat surfaces. So the smaller you tear your pieces, you don't have to be crazy about it, but this is a good size. This is like 3 by 2 sort of ish. Okay, it doesn't want to tear. This is really overkill. You don't have to make it this small, but something like this is great. Now, I've said this before, compost happens. Whether you take the time to break things down into smaller pieces like this or not, it's going to happen eventually. But for gardeners who have a schedule and want to make sure they have compost ready for next season, these tips are going to help. Just this alone is going to help you a lot. Now, you can do this with your greens as well. When you're in the kitchen, before you take the stems of some chard or a big, slice of pineapple that's not great and throw it in there, chop it up into smaller cubes. That's going to break down really fast because bacteria is going to have a lot more surface area to work with, and it's going to get to work on it right away. Now, if you want to get really crazy, let me show you this thing I've got over here. This is a chipper shredder, and it solves domestic disputes. And I don't mean that in the, I guess that's your accomplice in the wood chipper kind of way. I mean, it makes it easier for anyone to turn a pile if you have a disagreement about whether to break stuff up into smaller pieces before you put it in the compost bin. Using a chipper shredder means all of your biomass ingredients will be relatively the same size. What does that mean? It means that your pile will break down faster and it will be much, much, much easier to turn. In this household, we've had a disagreement about whether stuff should be broken up into small pieces before put in the pile. And that makes the pile a lot more challenging to turn because you hit big pieces and they don't want to pull out, and it's a mess. But when you use something like this, which I admit is not cheap, it is an expense, but if you take good care of it, it will last your lifetime, and it does really good work. If you have a chipper shredder like this, you will be able to put things like light twiggy things such as this in the hopper here for the shredder and leaves and such like that, or you can take bigger things like this that have a stem that's bigger than 1/2 inch and it goes in the chipper. When you're done, you end up with biomass that is evenly sized, lots of surface area, and it's going to break down beautifully and quickly and build heat in your compost pile. Now, I'm not doing any particular brand endorsements, but a really good chipper will cost you anywhere from $700 to $1,500. And we opted for the electric one because we didn't want the fumes from gasoline. And we also have an extension cord long enough to reach a power outlet here in the backyard. If you're in the back 40, you might need a gas-powered one. They are more powerful. Electric are a little less powerful, but worth not having the off-gassing. I understand that taking the time to tear up your pieces of paper and shred your biomass, it requires a little bit of extra time, but you reap the benefits on the other side. So when your compost is ready to use sooner and is much easier to turn in the process. So take a 1/2 hour and tie up, put on a podcast, tear up some biomass, keep it in a bin so it's ready to use when the time comes, and you'll be so glad you did that. Trust me, you'll have better compost in the end. For more information about building a compost pile and what to put in it, check out my book, Gardening for Geeks. You'll find a lot of other information about composting, how to use it, how to sift it, how to build a sifter, all kinds of other stuff at gardenerd.com. Consider becoming a Patreon subscriber to support all the free stuff we do here at Gardenerd. And of course, check out my other books, Grow Your Own Mini Fruit Garden, and my novel, Garden Variety. Happy gardening.